It was a Thursday afternoon, the kind of day where the air felt heavy with anticipation. Alex sat in his office, staring at the email that had just popped into his inbox. He had been waiting for this message for weeks, but now, as his eyes skimmed over the words, his heart sank. Dear Alex, after careful consideration, we have decided to offer the senior developer position to another candidate. We appreciate your hard work and encourage you to continue contributing to the team. Best, HR. There it was, the rejection Alex had been dreading. The promotion he had worked tirelessly for, sacrificed weekends for, and even distanced himself from his friends and family for, had been given to someone else. Worse, it had gone to a colleague with far less experience, a person known more for his social charm than his technical skills. Alex felt a sharp sting in his chest, like a punch to the gut. How could this happen? He had been with the company for 6 years, always delivering on every project, always exceeding expectations, and now, just like that, he had been overlooked. It felt personal. It felt unfair. A knot of bitterness began to form in his throat. As the hours ticked by, Alex found himself spiraling into self-doubt. Was I not good enough? Did I do something wrong? His mind raced through every possible reason for this rejection. It felt like a confirmation of his deepest insecurities. He wasn't as smart, capable, or worthy as he thought he was. That night, Alex sat on his couch, his laptop still open but the screen dimmed. He couldn't shake the feeling of failure. Maybe this is the end, he thought. Maybe I've hit my ceiling. But then, a small voice inside him whispered something different. This wasn't the end. It didn't have to be. What if, instead of seeing this rejection as the final blow, he could see it as a turning point? What if this no was an opportunity, not a defeat? He remembered something he had read in Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Alex realized he had a choice. He could either let this rejection destroy him, or he could use it to rebuild himself stronger than before. The thought gave him a sense of resolve he hadn't felt in days. He grabbed a notebook from his desk and began to write. Over the next 7 days, Alex would take a journey, a personal challenge to embrace rejection and turn it into his greatest strength. He would apply the principles of Stoicism to his life, using each lesson to rise above the setbacks that had knocked him down. Day 1. Acceptance. Facing reality without bitterness. The first day of Alex's experiment began with a simple but challenging principle: acceptance. As soon as he woke up, he knew the day wouldn't be easy. The sting of the rejection was still fresh, lingering like a dark cloud over his thoughts. But he had made a decision. He wasn't going to let bitterness consume him. Stoicism teaches that while we cannot control the events that happen to us, we can control how we respond to them. Alex wrote down this quote in his notebook: "We cannot direct the wind, but we can adjust the sails." This would be his guiding principle for the day. He had no power over the fact that someone else got the promotion, but he could control how he let it affect him. Throughout the day, Alex reminded himself of this. Whenever the thought of his colleague, now his superior, crossed his mind, he paused, took a deep breath, and repeated his mantra: "I can't control this, but I can control myself." It wasn't easy. Every time he saw his colleague's name in an email thread or heard him chatting in the office kitchen, a part of Alex still felt a pang of frustration. He was tempted to compare himself, to dwell on why he wasn't the one in that position. But instead of letting those thoughts spiral, Alex turned inward. Challenge. The hardest part was accepting that life wasn't always fair. No matter how hard he had worked, no matter how deserving he felt, the outcome was out of his hands. He had to accept that. It didn't mean he was a failure. It didn't mean he wasn't good enough. It just meant that sometimes the universe had other plans. That evening, as Alex sat down to journal, he wrote about the difficulty of the day. He acknowledged his frustration, but also recognized that he had made progress. He hadn't lashed out, hadn't let his emotions control him. For the first time in days, he felt a glimmer of peace. Acceptance wasn't about giving up, it was about letting go of the need to control everything. Day 2, shifting focus, self-improvement over validation. On the second day, Alex decided to shift his focus from external validation to internal growth. He had spent so much time chasing approval, whether from his boss, his colleagues, or the idea of success, that he had lost sight of what truly mattered, his own development. He started the day by listing skills he wanted to improve. Not because they would get him promoted, but because they would make him better. Alex realized that the promotion wasn't the be-all and end-all. What truly mattered was that he kept evolving, regardless of what anyone else thought. He picked 2 areas to focus on: leadership and advanced coding techniques. Alex enrolled in an online leadership course and spent an hour each day working on a personal coding project he had long abandoned. The project wasn't for his boss, his company, or anyone else. It was for him. It was something he loved, something that reminded him of why he got into this field in the first place. Challenge. However, shifting focus was harder than Alex had anticipated. The habit of seeking external validation was deeply ingrained in him. Throughout the day, he caught himself wondering what others would think if they knew he was working on his own project instead of throwing himself back into the company's work. He struggled with the fear of being judged as wasting time or not being dedicated enough. Despite this, Alex pushed forward. He reminded himself that true growth doesn't from the approval of others, but from the dedication to self-improvement. In his journal, he wrote, "What I do today is for me, not for anyone else." And for the first time in a long while, Alex felt a sense of control over his life. Day 3, emotional mastery, controlling your response. The third day's lesson was perhaps the most difficult, mastering his emotions. Alex had always been someone who wore his heart on his sleeve. If he was angry, people knew. If he was frustrated, it showed. Rejection had thrown him into an emotional tailspin, and he knew that if he didn't learn to control his responses, it would continue to hinder his progress. He remembered a passage from Meditations. "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Alex repeated this to himself as he navigated the day, making it his goal not to let his emotions dictate his actions. In the afternoon, he faced his first real test. One of his colleagues, someone who had always been competitive with Alex, made a snide comment about the promotion. Something along the lines of, "Guess the boss made the right choice after all, huh?" Alex felt a wave of anger rise inside him. He could feel the words forming on his lips, ready to snap back with a sarcastic retort. But instead, he paused. He remembered the lesson he was trying to learn. He took a deep breath, smiled tightly, and simply said, "I guess so." Then, he walked away. It wasn't about suppressing his emotions, it was about choosing not to let them control him. The victory wasn't in the exchange itself, but in the restraint. Alex had won not by lashing out, but by remaining calm. Challenge. Emotional mastery was by far the hardest challenge Alex had faced so far. He realized that his emotions weren't something he could simply switch off. They were powerful, and they could overwhelm him if he let them. But by practicing mindfulness and choosing how to respond, he found a new kind of strength. That night, as he journaled, Alex reflected on the power of controlling his emotions. He wasn't perfect. There had been moments throughout the day where he felt the familiar twinge of frustration, but he was making progress. He wrote, "Today, I chose how I reacted. I chose not to let my emotions control me." By the end of the third day, Alex could feel the subtle shift happening within him. Acceptance had allowed him to let go of the bitterness that had weighed him down. Shifting his focus to self-improvement gave him a renewed sense of purpose, and mastering his emotions had given him the power to navigate life's challenges with a calm and steady hand. He was beginning to realize that rejection wasn't something to be feared. It was something to be used, something that could fuel his growth if he let it. The week was just beginning, but already Alex could feel the transformation taking root. Day 4, reframing rejection, turning no into new opportunities. By the fourth day, Alex was starting to feel a shift in his perspective. The bitterness from the rejection was beginning to subside, and he could see more clearly that this setback wasn't a reflection of his value. If anything, it was a redirection. He had been reading more about Stoicism, and one lesson stood out to him. Rejection is not the end, it is a new beginning, a detour to somewhere even better. Alex realized that by clinging to the rejection, he had been focusing on what he had lost, rather than what he could gain. He thought back to a project idea he'd had months ago, an app that could simplify project management for remote teams. It had been a passion of his, but he'd put it aside due to his workload at the company. Now, with the promotion out of sight, he found himself thinking, why not revisit it? That day, Alex spent his free time sketching out ideas for the app. For the first time in weeks, he felt excitement bubbling up inside him. The rejection had freed him from the constant pursuit of validation at his company and opened up space for something new, something that was his own. Breakthrough moment. It wasn't about proving anything to anyone anymore. It was about creating something meaningful, something that could help others and reignite his passion for innovation. This new perspective was liberating. Alex realized that sometimes life's no is a redirection to something better suited to your true potential. That night, as he journaled, he wrote, "I thought rejection was the end of the road, but really, it's a new path I didn't see before. This app could be the beginning of something great." Day 5, building resilience, the power of persistence. On the 5th day, Alex decided to tackle another key Stoic principle, resilience. One of the most powerful lessons Stoicism teaches is that setbacks are inevitable, but it's how we respond to them that defines our character. Alex knew that he couldn't avoid rejection in the future, whether it was in his career, personal life, or even with his new app. The key was learning how to bounce back, stronger each time. He remembered a quote by Epictetus, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." With this in mind, Alex set a new goal, to embrace rejection as a learning tool. Every no he encountered would be a lesson, not a defeat. That afternoon, Alex decided to pitch his app idea to a small group of friends, many of whom worked in tech. He wanted honest feedback, knowing that it might be hard to hear. He presented the concept, his vision, and the market need for the app. As expected, not everyone was on board. Some friends liked the idea, but others were skeptical, pointing out potential flaws in the design and feasibility. Initially, Alex felt that familiar sting of rejection. He wanted everyone to be excited about his idea, but not all of them were. He took a deep breath, reminding himself of the lesson he was trying to learn. This was feedback, not failure. Rejection wasn't the end of his app, it was an opportunity to refine and improve it. Breakthrough moment. Instead of getting defensive, Alex thanked his friends for their feedback and asked more questions. He realized that resilience wasn't about brushing off criticism, it was about using it to grow. By the end of the conversation, he had a clearer idea of how to adjust his app to make it more viable. The rejection had given him the insight he needed to make his project even better. In his journal that night, Alex wrote, "Rejection is a refining process. It hurts, but it makes the final product stronger." Day 6. Letting go of resentment. Freeing yourself from the past. As Alex moved through the week, he began to notice something else. The resentment he had been carrying towards his boss, his colleague, and even the company was starting to fade. The energy he had once spent dwelling on the unfairness of the promotion had been redirected towards his personal growth and new projects. He was letting go of the past and focusing on the future. However, there was one thing left for Alex to do. He had avoided his boss for the past few days, still feeling a residual bitterness about the promotion. But now he knew that to fully move forward, he needed to clear the air. It wasn't about confronting his boss or demanding explanations. It was about finding closure. That afternoon, Alex scheduled a brief meeting with his boss. He didn't plan to rehash the promotion decision, but rather to ask for feedback on how he could improve. He walked into the meeting with a calm, collected mindset, ready to hear whatever his boss had to say. To Alex's surprise, his boss was supportive and even offered some constructive criticism. He explained that while Alex's technical skills were top-notch, he needed to work on his leadership presence, something his colleague had demonstrated well during the selection process. It wasn't about talent or hard work. It was about communication and visibility. Breakthrough moment. Instead of feeling defensive or resentful, Alex took the feedback to heart. He realized that this was another opportunity for growth. He had been so focused on his technical abilities that he hadn't paid enough attention to the soft skills that were equally important in leadership roles. After the meeting, Alex felt lighter. He had let go of the resentment that had been weighing him down. He had accepted the feedback as a tool for improvement, not a personal attack. That evening, in his journal, he wrote, "Resentment holds you back. Letting go sets you free." Day 7. Self-worth comes from within, the final lesson. On the final day of his week-long journey, Alex sat down to reflect on everything he had learned. The lessons he had applied weren't just about dealing with rejection. They were about finding strength within himself. He had learned that rejection wasn't a reflection of his worth, but rather a part of life's process of growth and redirection. The most profound lesson Alex realized was that his self-worth didn't come from external validation, whether it was a job title, a promotion, or the approval of others. His value came from his dedication to self-improvement, his willingness to face challenges, and his ability to bounce back from setbacks. He looked back at the version of himself from 7 days ago, frustrated, bitter, and consumed by the feeling of failure. Now he felt a sense of peace. He wasn't afraid of rejection anymore. In fact, he welcomed it as a tool for growth. Final reflection. In his final journal entry, Alex wrote, "Rejection is not a failure. It is a lesson, a redirection, a chance to grow. My worth is not tied to what others think of me or what positions I hold. My worth comes from my growth, my persistence, and my ability to keep moving forward." He closed the notebook with a sense of accomplishment. The journey wasn't over. There would be more rejections, more challenges, and more lessons to learn. But Alex was ready for them. He had built the mental and emotional resilience to face whatever came next with grace and confidence. Call to action for the reader. Alex's story isn't just his own. It's a reflection of the journey we all face at some point in our lives. Rejection is inevitable, whether it's in our careers, relationships, or personal endeavors. But what if, instead of letting rejection break us, we used it to build ourselves up? What if we saw every no as a stepping stone to something greater? You don't have to face rejection alone, and you certainly don't have to let it define you. Like Alex, you can choose to turn rejection into a tool for growth. Here are some key takeaways from his journey. Accept what you cannot control. Life is full of setbacks. Accept them with grace and focus on what you can control. Your response. Shift your focus to self-improvement. Don't seek validation from others. Instead, focus on growing and improving yourself for your own sake. Master your emotions. Rejection can trigger powerful emotions, but remember, you have control over how you react to them. Use rejection as a redirection. Every setback is an opportunity to explore new paths and ideas. Don't see rejection as an end, but as a new beginning. Build resilience. The key to success isn't avoiding failure. It's bouncing back from it. Embrace each rejection as a chance to become stronger. Let go of resentment. Holding on to bitterness only holds you back. Let go, learn from the experience, and move forward with a clear mind. Find your self-worth from within. Your value isn't determined by external factors. It comes from within, from your persistence, growth, and inner strength. Now, it's your turn. The next time you face rejection, remember Alex's journey. Don't let it bring you down. Use it as a springboard to rise even higher. Start by applying these lessons in your own life and see how rejection can become your greatest ally in personal growth and success. Take that first step today. Write down one thing you've been rejected from recently and ask yourself, how can I use this to grow? Then, take action. Your story, like Alex's, is just beginning.